welcome. You're watching News Night. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Well, amid India's ongoing evacuation from Afghanistan following Taliban takeover on August 15th, the war-ravaged country continues to explode further, with sharp reactions pouring in from the global community. And this even at a time when Team Biden tries to justify the timings and intent of troops withdrawal. On News Night tonight, we ask, amidst intensifying evacuations, international community is stepping in to diffuse tension. But will that work? Is that going to work in Afghanistan as it continues to stare at an uncertain future? All that and much more on News Night. But first up, the headlines. India continues to airlift Indian nationals from crisis-ridden Afghanistan. Almost 300 Indians, including some foreign nationals, repatriated on Sunday. Indian Air Force C-17 lands at Hindon Air Base, while 2 aircrafts landed Delhi's IGI. Evacuees express gratitude to Government of India. Afghanistan continues to explode as Taliban firing in Kabul triggers chaos. 7 killed. Australia, including other nations, scramble to ensure safe evacuations of their nationals. Meanwhile, G7 to deliberate on Afghanistan crisis on Tuesday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays his last respects and homage to the late leader Kalyan Singh. Says late Kalyan Singh made public welfare the mantra of his life. Political leaders from across the party also pay tribute to the departed soul. From Lucknow to Aligarh, thousands of people pay homage to former Chief Minister Kalyan Singh, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. Many ministers, former ministers, pay their tribute to the departed leader. Last rites to be performed on Monday. Yogi Adityanath announces 3-day state mourning in UP. The country's war against COVID-19 continues. 30,948 new cases reported in the country during last 24 hours. Cumulative COVID-19 vaccination crosses 58 crore 15 lakh mark. Ministry of Information and Broadcasting set to launch a gamut of activities to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav from 23rd to 29th August under the iconic week celebrations. Celebrations of various aspects related to the freedom movement to be brought to the masses. All media units, including Doordarshan and All India Radio, to organize programs. Silver medal for India in World Athletics U20 or Under-20 Championships. Shelly Singh wins silver medal in long jump. Its 3rd medal for India in this edition. And Raksha Bandhan, the festival of brother and sisters bonds, celebrated across the country today. Sisters tie Rakhi on the wrist of their brothers. Brothers pledge to protect their sisters. President, Vice President and Prime Minister also extend their greetings. And now the top stories in detail. When on Sunday, Indian families heaved a sigh of relief when special repatriation flight by the Indian Air Force carrying at least 168 passengers landed at the Hindon Air Base near Delhi from Kabul. India has been reportedly allowed to operate 2 flights per day from Kabul to evacuate its nationals safely who are stranded in Afghanistan. And the permission was granted by American and North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that is NATO forces, which have been controlling operations of the Hamid Karzai International Airport after the Afghan capital fell to Taliban on August 15. Here's a ground report from Hindon and IGI Airport.
We were stuck, I with my family and my son, for 3 days in Kabul. So the situation is very intense in Kabul, and fortunately the Indian army helped us to evacuate from Kabul to Delhi.
बहुत मुश्किलों से इधर तक पहुँचे हैं, मतलब वहाँ बहुत वेट करना पड़ा, बहुत चक्कर काटे, तो बहुत मन्नतें की, तब जाके बहुत यहाँ पे निकल के आए। दहशतगर्दी बहुत ज़्यादा थी, डर ज़्यादा था, कुछ पता नहीं कोई किसको मार दे, कोई पूछने वाला नहीं था, बस हालात बहुत ख़राब थे, डर डर के जी रहे थे वहाँ पे।
तालिबान का हम लोग कभी भी परवाह नहीं कर सकते. तालिबान बोलेगा ना और उन लोग का माइंड अलग है. उन लोग is a very dangerous person. Our thinking way very dangerous person. So suddenly they are taking government. So we also scared. Last I am working 2007 to 2021. So I am never getting any problem about the Talibans, and because we have the US army guys secured in ours. So that's why we not doing anything. So last minute they're taking all over Kabul. So we have any information, any idea. So immediately we escape that place.
These are tales of horror and ordeal coming straight from those who saw it all with their own eyes. Speaks volumes of the chaos and terror unleashed by Taliban as Afghanistan continues to explode.
काबुल से 14 को हम लोगों को काबुल से उठाया गया था, तो उसके बाद दोहा कतर लेके गए और तब से वो संपर्क करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं इंडियन एम्बेसी से. तो अभी एक सरदार जी आए वहाँ पे, उन्होंने पूरा अरेंज किया सब कुछ कल, तो अभी हम लोगों को इधर भेजा उन्होंने.
Meanwhile, India continues to airlift its citizens from Afghanistan. On Sunday, an Indian Air Force special repatriation flight with 168 people on board, including 107 Indian nationals, landed at Hindon Air Base in Ghaziabad from Kabul. On Sunday also, nearly 100 Indians also returned safely via private airline. Indians repatriated from Afghanistan have expressed gratitude to the government of India. Earlier, the first batch of 135 Indians who were evacuated from Afghanistan's Kabul to Doha over the past days were repatriated to India last night. Indian Embassy in Doha, Qatar provided consular and logistical assistance to ensure safe return.
Military evacuate us through C-17. We just came through Kabul military side airport to Doha US military base. Then Doha to Indian Embassy, Qatar Indian Embassy, they evacuate us, they help a lot for us. No, for the reason, just tension is there, but the Marine was there, US Marine, that's what but still tension was with us.
India is airlifting its nationals through the Shanbay in Tajikistan and Qatar. Indian Air Force has already evacuated around 180 passengers, including India's ambassador to Afghanistan. The External Affairs Ministry has urged all Indian nationals in Afghanistan requiring assistance to contact its Special Afghanistan Cell immediately. It has set up Special Afghanistan Cell to coordinate repatriation and other requests coming in from Afghanistan. Meghna Dev's report for DD India. And the latest from Afghanistan, G7 leaders will be discussing the crisis in Afghanistan on Tuesday, reportedly in a virtual summit. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced it on Sunday, and this is coming a week after Taliban retook power, contending that how vital it is for international community to work together to ensure safer evacuations, prevent a humanitarian crisis, and support that is to be lent to Afghan people. Now, as Afghanistan continues to explode and grapple the crisis, Taliban has blamed United States for airport chaos. Meanwhile, in a strongly worded reaction from Russia, President Vladimir Putin has said that he does not want militants showing up under the cover of Afghanistan refugees in Russia. So overall, sharp international reactions continue to pour in.
Chaotic situation prevailed at the Kabul airport on Sunday, with thousands of people trying to flee the Taliban, even as shocking images of people clinging onto jets raise alarm over the slow evacuation process led by the countries including United States and Britain. On Sunday, the British military acknowledged the 7 deaths of civilians in the crowd in Kabul. There have been a stampede and crushing injuries in the crowds, especially as Taliban fighters fire into the air to drive away those desperate to get on any flight out of the country.
Well, I mean, we've heard the reports that you mentioned, and also we sadly know that at least 7 people died in the crowds yesterday, and we send our condolences to their families. It was just unimaginable, the circumstances that people were trying to queue in yesterday. And if I may, I'd also like to pay testimony to the amazing work of the troops that are on the ground, who are confronted with those realities and are seeing things that are unimaginably hard.
Meanwhile, US Embassy has issued a new security warning telling citizens not to travel to Kabul airport without individual instruction from a US government representative. NATO said at least 20 people died in the past 7 days in and around Kabul airport during the hasty evacuation process being carried out by several countries. In the meantime, Australia ran 4 flights into Kabul, Afghanistan on Saturday night, evacuating more than 300 people, including Australians, Afghan visa holders, New Zealanders, United States, and British citizens. The news came after the United States and Germany told their citizens in Afghanistan to avoid traveling to Kabul airport, citing security risks, as thousands tried to flee almost a week after Taliban took control.
Last night we ran 4 flights into Kabul, and over 300 were able to be evacuated out of Kabul. We will continue to run those flights, working together with our partners and our allies. We are uplifting not just Australians and Afghan visa holders for Australia, but those from the United Kingdom, the United States and New Zealand, and the offer to work together with others such as Japan is all there.
A plane carrying 2 German helicopters landed in Kabul on Saturday. According to the chief of the German forces, the 2 helicopters will be ready for operations in Kabul only on mission to be coordinated with the United States. They will only be used to evacuate people in the Kabul area, not further away in the cities such as northern Mazar-e-Sharif or the Hindu Kush mountains. The German military has already airlifted almost 2,000 people out of the Kabul airport. An Italian military aircraft touched down in Kabul airport on Sunday to evacuate Afghan civilians. The Italian Air Force plane will stop over in Kuwait and move evacuees to the aircraft that will transport them to Rome as part of a massive international airlift mission. Situation continued to worsen in other parts of capital city Kabul. A video posted to social media purported to show a large fire burning at a warehouse in the Demraz area of Kabul on Saturday. The site is understood to be close to Kabul Zoo. Afghans who fled their country this week have spoken about their despair at leaving loved ones behind and the uncertain future ahead of them after the Taliban's rapid takeover. The Taliban advance has led to a mass evacuation of Afghans and foreigners amid fears of reprisals.
It's very dangerous for the people, especially for those who are working with the foreign people. As I have experience working with the foreign people, it was so dangerous for me to be in my country. It was very difficult to leave my country before coming Taliban. I never think I should go anywhere or leave my country. I love my country. I was very excited to work with the people or deliver services to the people and be in my country. But unfortunately, by Taliban coming, I don't have any choice. I was supposed to leave there because it was dangerous for us.
Meanwhile, Taliban are making all efforts to form a council to govern the country as its top political leaders are camping in capital city Kabul. The presence of Mullah Abdul Ghani brother in Kabul, who returned to Kandahar earlier this week from Qatar, was confirmed by the Taliban officials. Brother negotiated the militants' 2020 peace deal with the US, and he is now expected to play a key role in negotiations between the Taliban and officials from the Afghan government that the militant group deposed. Afghan officials familiar with talks held in the capital say the Taliban have said they will not make announcements on their government until the August 31 deadline for the US troops withdrawal passes. Bureau Report, DD India.
Meanwhile, an Afghan woman gave birth to a baby girl on board a US evacuation aircraft on Saturday, moments after the plane landed at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Now, according to the US Air Mobility Command, the woman was part of a group fleeing the Taliban in Afghanistan and was on the second stage of the evacuation flight, which had taken off from a base in the Middle East. And in focus tonight, we ask, as Afghanistan continues to explode, should international community step in to contain the situation? And can international community actually rein in some sort of certainty in trouble-torn Afghanistan? And we're very glad to have on the show tonight Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, former India's ambassador. He's been Secretary ERMEA, Minister of External Affairs, joining us on the show, and also Professor Harshvardhan, Distinguished Fellow ORF. Thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, for joining us. Ambassador Chakravarti, very quickly now, I would like to start from the kind of sharp reactions that are coming from across the globe. For example, Russia. For example, what Boris Johnson has said, Tony Blair. This just goes actually beyond the kind of criticism glaring at Biden's troop withdrawal. Many are questioning the timings and the intent of it. Where do you think the situation in the last few days and today's development, what do you think? What's the sense that you are getting? In which direction is this going?
My sense is very clear in the sense that the Americans are going. I mean, let's not put our bets on the Americans coming back. So that the trend that has been set in motion is going to continue, and nobody else is going to go back there to reverse the situation. So I think we are going to have a Taliban-dominated government, either fully dominated or with some faces from previous administrations to give it a semblance that it is a kind of inclusive and kind of an all-party government, etc., so that they can get some kind of recognition. Because don't forget, Afghanistan today is an economic basket case.
Okay.
All their aid, etc., has been cut off. Their reserves have been frozen. They have very little money and to run the government. So how are they going to run the government is a very, very important question. So they are telling the employees to come back and they will be paid their salaries as before, but I don't know where the money will come from. Pakistan is not able to provide the money. It itself is is in difficult economic situation. So there's a huge problem in terms of running a government also, even though it is formed. So I think Afghanistan is in for a very bad time. And of course, we are seeing all the chaotic scenes that at the airport that people want to just flee. They just don't want the Taliban government. There are many, many in Afghanistan who have grown up in a relatively, in a democratic kind of an atmosphere with freedoms, etc. The women, the girls, etc. Today they are being pushed back into their burqa. And so who would like that? Nobody would like that. So they want to get out. And that is why you see those crowds at the airport, where everybody wants to get out so that they can escape the Taliban rule, which is going to be very clearly an Islamic emirate with Sharia law.
Okay, many would try to set in this narrative, the good Taliban versus bad Taliban, Professor Harshvardhan, but the fact remains that a massive humanitarian crisis glaring at Afghanistan, human rights violations continue to take place, glaring at Afghanistan, and this is coming now when Taliban is going out of its way to form a council, to form the government there. Right now it's a rudderless state. The Taliban perspective, and US still trying to make a point that they're trying to negotiate with Taliban, they're still trying to talk to Taliban. My question to you is this final end chapter USA? And if yes, then what next for Afghanistan? Is it going to be the Taliban Afghanistan that the world is now looking at?
Well, I think to a certain extent, yes. I would say that what we will be looking at would be in Afghanistan, where America and other Western powers would be less and less interested, or at least willing to do. So there is certainly a feeling of abandonment, as Ambassador Chakravarti was pointing out. Those who have grown up in the last 20 years suddenly feel abandoned, suddenly feel very disheartened, and there is no one to take up their cause. So the international community actually has shown how incapacitated it is to work under such circumstances. And I think for the Taliban, the question is what is, what is going to be the future? And certainly what we have seen that they are trying to project a sense that this is Taliban 2.0. That this is a Taliban that is good Taliban. They are willing to say all nice things, at least in Kabul. But in the past, this Taliban has not really acceded to any of their commitments. They have not held up to any of their commitments. And what is the provinces which they had captured before they came to Kabul, there have been horrendous human rights violations.
Absolutely.
They continue to happen even today. Outside the glare of the media, which is focused on Kabul. So I think there is a degradation, the kind of Sharia and other laws that they have passed, denigrating women and minorities, targeting political opposition. This is a serious situation. Now, of course, there are many countries in the world who, in the garb of pragmatism, would now be willing to engage with them. And I think we are hearing some of those comments coming out. For example, from the UK, we have seen extraordinary comments coming out from Chief of Defence Staff saying that this is, these are just boys with certain kind of honor code and so on and so forth. I think what we are looking at now is that world is waiting and watching to see if they actually practice what they preach. But I don't think that anyone is under, with any serious understanding of Afghanistan is under any illusion that Taliban remain what they were 20 years back. Correct. And they have no real intention of changing themselves, apart from some face-saving measures, which perhaps would be needed because they have no money, they have no country, and they would like to build something in case they have a governance agenda.
And if writing on the wall, like you just said, is this Taliban finally takes over and in terms of forming the government, the spillover effect of it, Ambassador Chakravarti, it's going to change a lot of things around Afghanistan. And what does it really augur for the rest of the world? Like, United States still continues to say that they will not allow Afghanistan to be the sanctuary of terrorists. But isn't it late? Many would question, in fact, are questioning the timings and the intent of troop withdrawal, even if Biden tries to justify it.
I think the biggest issue that the region and the world will face is the revival of, international kind of jihad and conducted by these Islamist organizations like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, ISK and others. Because there is, no doubt, and reports are coming in of great joy among these groups. And the Taliban has promised under the Doha Agreement that it will not host these kind of organizations anymore. But if the Taliban cannot control all the territory of Afghanistan, then I think they cannot live up to this promise. And these Al-Qaeda elements, others who are already there in some form or the other, will certainly develop roots and start their activities all over again. Now, other factor, of course, for us, as far as India is concerned, is the revival of these training camps, etc., in Afghanistan, which the Pakistanis can use to push the Lashkars and the others and the Jaishes into that place and claim that these guys are not here, they are in actually Afghanistan, and sort of build a firewall against their terrorist activities, which has been a kind of an instrument of state policy of the Pakistan government. So I think these are the main issues that confront us. Now, whether this will happen or not, you see, Pakistan will demand its pound of flesh from the Taliban, having supported it, armed it, financed it, and even during this takeover, the Pakistani army units and ISI advisors have been embedded with the Taliban units. And you cannot expect a ragtag army like the Taliban to plan such an event and the swift takeover of the country and Kabul without some very sophisticated advice and help from, obviously, from Pakistan. So I think we are looking at a situation where we have to wait and see for some time. And I think, of course, India must be present in Kabul, whichever the government finally takes over, because we need to be there so that we can protect our interests. But let's see. I think our minimal presence in our embassy may be in the offing, and we could and depends on the Taliban. I believe the Taliban Indian embassy. They have said so. They're also cooperating in the evacuation to some extent.
Okay.
So let us see. I think we are building a certain kind of, tracks with the Taliban also, maybe at a lower level, some kind of cooperation. They are extending. So let us see how it pans out.
But is this, Professor Harshvardhan, a terror state, Afghanistan, if this kind of Taliban really takes over what we're actually, the kind of chaos, the kind of crisis that we see on ground, and if that is the truth, then this doesn't send a very positive message across the globe. We are fighting terror. When I say we, I mean India, and no amount of justification can really suffice what we have seen, what is happening in Afghanistan. All countries are coming in, they're ensuring their nationals are evacuated safely, but what about the Afghanistan citizens? What about them?
Yes, I think that has been the most unfortunate part of the Biden's decision to withdraw so precipitously from Afghanistan, and I think America will have to pay both a price, both in terms of its image as well as in terms of its credibility for a very long time. Because I think those who at one point would have seen Western world talking of this great liberal order that they want to create, they used to lecture other countries on human rights and democracy, suddenly now find that they have to come out of Afghanistan in this fashion and abandon all those who stood by them through thick and thin.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting. I just want to ask you here, since you're talking about abandonment, who should take the responsibility and accountability of abandoning Afghanistan citizens? Should it be the former Afghan regime, or should it be Biden? The responsibility needs to be fixed somewhere. Accountability.
Yes, I think, in some ways, Mr. Biden will be accountable for this. And I think his legacy will be tainted by this.
Okay.
Whatever he's saying today, trying to defend it, laying the blame on everyone. First, he says buck stops with him. Then he lays the blame on the Afghan government, on the Afghan army, and even Afghan people. Because he says that ultimately it's for them to decide what they want to do, as if they have a choice in front of, terror-wielding Talibs. So I think the question that I think the world should be asking America, and I think this is something that Mr. Biden will have to live to regret in some ways, because everything now he does will be clouded by this one decision. And we are already seeing the kind of comments that are coming out from some of the closest allies, Germany, UK, Tony Blair, and all. I think that everyone recognized that America was withdrawing. Everyone knew that America had to go. There was a political consensus in America that American forces should be out. But there was no need to be withdrawing those forces in a manner that put so many lives at risk in Afghanistan. And I think that is the most vulnerable have been most affected. And I think therefore for the West now, every time they will look at other countries and lecture them on human rights and freedom and democracy, there'll be so much skepticism on this that I think they have lost one of the strongest leverage that they had in international politics.
Yes, that's a very strong point that you've made, Professor Harshvardhan. I want Ambassador Pinak Chakrabarty's reaction on it. I mean, botched up, did he, Team Biden? And this Afghanistan chapter is going to be the darkest chapter if we talk about the Biden's legacy. No amount of justification can really cut ice with the global community. Look at what Russia says. Putin says he doesn't want militants showing up under the cover of Afghanistan refugees. Tony Blair calls it unnecessary. The current regime in UK, this is going to have a massive impact on Biden's image internationally.
Oh, I'm sure it will. This is a legacy he'll never live down. But I think it is perhaps not entirely Biden's fault, because it was President Trump who actually announced the date of the withdrawal as September. And by announcing a date, he gave away the only card that Americans had to leverage the talks with Taliban. Taliban knew that the Americans are going. And hence, they became more and more difficult in the negotiations and would give minimal concessions, etc. Then, of course, Biden came and announced that he will advance the date to to August, which made matters worse, and he started withdrawing. So Taliban knew that the Americans had lost the will to stay on in Afghanistan. So they had already planned that. So, and they moved earlier than what they had planned, with their, of course, Pakistani advisors and help and units embedded with them. And they had already infiltrated into villages earlier. So it was a cakewalk, and they had subverted the Afghan army as well through their ethnic and other links and and tribal links. So the Afghan army people also saw the writing on the wall, so they did not fight. And so you see what happened, the collapse that took place, and it was a walkover for the Taliban ultimately.
Should the global community now step up its effort to fix this? I think, Professor Harshvardhan, chaos is a very small word. I mean, there are reports suggesting that representative from Haqqani network is there, and they are in talks with Taliban. And if you have Haqqanis collaborating with Talibanis and at the helm of affairs in Afghanistan, then what is the kind of world that we are looking at?
Well, I think it's going to be a very, very bumpy ride, not only for Afghanistan, but not only for the region, but for the world, for the foreseeable future, given the reactions that we have seen from various Islamist groups across the world. This is seen as a big morale booster. This is seen as something that is rarely accomplished. You have Taliban now defeating one of the mightiest military powers in the world, and it will have resonance across the world for a lot of these jihadist groups.
Absolutely.
Who were lying low. And so I think this is a global problem now. Americans and others are saying, well, we will prevent Afghanistan from becoming another haven for terrorists. How are they going to do that? If they could not do it in the last 20 years with all the investment, with all the troops, with all the facilities that they had at their disposal, now once they are out lock, stock and barrel, they have no way of ensuring that this is going to happen.
But is it not a haven for terrorists?
Pakistan.
Absolutely. And Professor Harshvardhan, very quickly, is it not already a sort of haven for terrorists? I mean, it's not the Afghanistan that we knew. I mean, 20 years, they covered so much of ground and everything is gone. And you have Haqqanis talking to Taliban, and the visuals speak for themselves. What is Biden talking about?
Yes, I think he is still trying to, these are still early days for him. He's still trying to justify what has happened. And I think and he's already facing a lot of blowback within the American system as well. If you look at both the moderate Democrats and the Republicans, both are pouncing on him. There has been a marked decline in his popularity ratings. They may be temporary, but I think that they tell you a story about the challenge that the West faces in terms of this, the global jihadist movement that confronts the West and the world. And there is no plan B. What happens tomorrow if some of these terror sanctuaries rise up again? Is there a plan to prevent that from happening? I think one by one, all of the cards have been given away, and one by one, almost this sort of a surrender that is being projected now will have grave consequences for the credibility of the West, and it will give a morale boost to all these groups who thought that they have to lie low, who thought that ultimately the world will come pouncing back at them. I mean, therefore, I think the important question is the world and those who are most affected by it, including India, should be leading the charge and making sure that the issue of terrorism does not get out of the global agenda, because that is going to be one of the biggest challenges over the next decade or so.
Very important point, sir. If you could just take that forward, that thought, Ambassador Chakravarti. World, including India, should take the charge, because the story now it started with Afghanistan, but we cannot wait for Afghanistan and the Taliban to resolve it. It's the world which has to step in, the international community. This is
when
important.
you talk of the international community, you really then pointing a finger at the UN, which has been remarkably inactive in this whole thing. For example,
I mean, UN and the rest of the world. UN and the rest of the world, everyone.
Yes, rest of the world, but the rest of the world doesn't act together. The EU acts together, for example. Then, of course, the SARC is there, regional organizations are. But let me go back to the point I was trying to make about the UN, which is that there could have been a measure I mean, you could have had UN peacekeeping forces in Afghanistan, but they didn't go down that route because obviously Pakistan must have objected or whatever. So there was too much of space given to Pakistan to carry on with its agenda. And that is what has happened. And the US was just keen to get out because of domestic compulsions. And they just did it in a precipitate manner, which has sort of unleashed this chaos that we are seeing on our screens every day. So I don't know what the international community can do, because normally one would expect a group of countries, or at least the P5, the major countries, to get together to do something. But everybody is doing its individual thing.
Absolutely.
So there is no cohesion here in the international community. And I doubt they will get together to do anything at all.
Yes, so like Jeevan said, G7 says we're going to meet on Tuesday to talk about it, but all the countries are right now, and likely so, rightly so, more concerned about safe evacuations of their nationals, and I think that makes sense. But then what happens to Afghanistan, back home, the people there? That's the big question. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for, gentlemen. Professor Harshvardhan and Ambassador Chakravarti, such a pleasure to have you both on the show on Newsnight tonight. Let's continue to talk about the lead story now. The United States on Sunday has enlisted several major American airlines in its chaotic evacuation of tens and tens of Afghans and foreigners from Kabul following its fall to Taliban. The Pentagon says Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had activated the rarely used Civil Reserve Air Fleet to aid the onward movement of people arriving at U.S. bases in the Middle East. 18 civilian aircraft from American Airlines, Atlas, Delta, Omni, Hawaiian and United all will aid dozens of military cargo transports involved in the evacuation. This is what the statement said. Rather than going in and out of the capital, the planes reportedly will transport people from United States bases in Qatar, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates to European countries, and for many onwards to the US as well. Now, with thousands and thousands of troops trying to secure Kabul's airport, Washington has set a deadline to complete one of the largest evacuation missions the Pentagon has ever conducted by August 31st. Up to 15,000 Americans need to be removed from Afghanistan. This is according to President Joe Biden, who says the administration wants to get at least 50,000 Afghan allies and their family members out of the country. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris' arrival in Singapore on Sunday in a trip aimed at establishing deeper ties with Southeast Asia came upon the shadow of Afghanistan's collapse, which has left allies questioning the credibility of United States foreign policy promises. Harris, the second member of the U.S. President Joe Biden's cabinet to visit the Southeast Asian country, was welcomed by Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan at Seletar Airport. Harris's trip aims to counter China's growing influence in Southeast Asia, to region Washington considers key to checking Chinese expansion. In other news, firefighters battled the Calder blaze approaching the town of Khyber on Saturday as wildfires were raging through central California without being contained. The fire, which has been raging in El Dorado County for a week, has destroyed 245 structures and has charged as many as 82,000 plus acres of land. It was with a 0% contained. Authorities shut down a portion of Highway 50 and issued new evacuation orders on Friday evening in anticipation of the weather. Nearly 30,000 people have been evacuated. We have some more international news lined up for you on Newsnight. Hurricane Grace has lashed Mexico with torrential rain on Saturday, setting off a trail of destruction that killed at least 8 people after becoming one of the most powerful storms in years to hit the country's Gulf Coast. Grace was blowing maximum sustained winds of 201 km/h, which is a Category 3 hurricane on the 5-step Saffir-Simpson scale when it slammed into the coast near the resort of Tocotulta in Veracruz state in the early morning. The state government has said that 8 people were killed, including 6 from a single family. All but one of the victims died in Jalpa, which is the state capital, including a young girl killed by a mudslide that hit her home. More on world news. Hurricane Henry is headed towards southern New England and Long Island on Sunday, threatening the region with high winds, a storm surge and drenching rainfall. The U.S. National Hurricane Center, or NHC, says by 2 a.m. Henry was located 215 kilometers south-southeast of Montauk Point on Long Island in New York State. The NHC added it was carrying top sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour and heading north. Henry was expected to hit Long Island or southern New England later on Sunday, hitting land at or near hurricane strength. More than 42 million people in the region were under a hurricane or tropical storm warning on Saturday. Well, Israeli aircraft struck Hamas sites in Gaza late on Saturday, the military has said, in an escalation of hostilities after earlier cross-border gunfire seriously injuring an Israeli soldier and wounding 41 Palestinians, including 2 critically. The injuries came during a Gaza protest organized by the enclave's Islamist rulers Hamas and other factions in support of Jerusalem, where Palestinian clashes with Israeli police helped spark an 11-day Israel-Hamas conflict in May. The Israeli military said hundreds of Palestinians gathered near the Strip's heavily fortified border, where some tried to scale the border fence and others threw explosives towards Israeli troops. Sweden's Prime Minister Stefan Löfven of the Social Democrats Party said on Sunday that he will resign in November. Löfven has been Prime Minister since 2014. That was a quick roundup of world news, and now some news and updates back home. Former UP Chief Minister and former Rajasthan Governor Kalyan Singh passed away in Lucknow on Saturday. Kalyan Singh's last rites will be performed on Monday on the banks of River Ganga at Narora. Yogi Adityanath, UP Chief Minister, has announced a 3-day state mourning in UP and a holiday on 23rd of August, while Uttarakhand government has declared a 1-day state mourning on Sunday. BJP veteran Kalyan Singh passed away on Saturday due to sepsis and multi-organ failure at the age of 89 in Lucknow. Former UP Chief Minister and former Rajasthan Governor Kalyan Singh passed away in Lucknow on Saturday. People from all walks of life paid tribute to him. Kalyan Singh's body was taken to his Lucknow residence in the morning, where people in large numbers came to pay their last respects to the departed leader. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also reached Lucknow to pay his tributes. The Prime Minister said that Kalyan Singh's parents had named him Kalyan and he lived up to his name throughout his life.
कल्याण सिंह जी के माता पिता ने उनका नाम कल्याण सिंह रखा था। उन्होंने जीवन ऐसे जिया, उन्होंने अपने माता पिता ने उन्हें जो नाम दिया था उस नाम को सार्थक किया। वो जीवन भर जन कल्याण के लिए जिए।
The Prime Minister talked to Kalyan Singh's son Rajveer Singh after paying rich tributes. Speaking on his demise, Prime Minister Modi called for making maximum efforts by taking his values and resolutions to compensate for him.
कल्याण सिंह जी भारत के कोने कोने में एक विश्वास का नाम बन गए थे, एक प्रतिबद्ध निर्णयकर्ता का नाम बन चुके थे और जीवन के अधिकतम समय वे जन कल्याण को लिए हमेशा प्रयत्नरत रहे।
From Kalyan Singh's Lucknow residence, his body was taken to Vidhan Bhavan, where also people paid their last respect. After that, Kalyan Singh's mortal remains were brought to BJP party office, where party leaders paid tributes to him. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and Deputy Chief Ministers Dinesh Sharma and Keshav Prasad Maurya were among leaders who paid their last respects to Kalyan Singh.
वो तो बराबर प्रारंभ से ही कहते थे रामलला बनाएंगे, मंदिर भी बनाएंगे। राम जन्मभूमि आंदोलन में उनकी बहुत ही प्रभावी भूमिका रही है।
उनके जाने से मेरी अपनी निजी क्षति भी बहुत हुई है, क्योंकि वो उन लोगों में से थे जो हमारी उम्र के थे और जिनके साथ बहुत यात्राएं की, जेल भी गए, लाठी भी खाई, उन्होंने भी खाई।
Kalyan Singh's body was finally brought to Lucknow airport by a special vehicle to take it to Aligarh. Last respects were also paid at the Lucknow airport. UP police gave guard of honor to Kalyan Singh in presence of Yogi Adityanath and his grandson and Minister of State for Education in the UP government, Sandeep Singh, Aligarh MP Satish Gautam and various other leaders were also present. Kalyan Singh's body was taken then to Ahilyabai Holkar Stadium located at Ramghat Road. His last rites will be performed on Monday on the banks of Ganga River at Narora. Yogi Adityanath announced a 3-day state mourning in UP and a holiday on 23rd of August. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President Venkaiah Naidu and Union Home Minister Amit Shah were among those who paid tributes to Kalyan Singh. Kalyan Singh lived for the welfare of the people throughout his life. He made public welfare his life mantra and dedicated his life for the bright future of the country. Bureau Report, DT India.
In other news, Jan Ashirwad Yatras of the BJP continue in different parts of the country. Newly inducted central ministers are holding dialogue with people in their respective areas. Union ministers are reaching out to the people with their government welfare policies and programs.
Newly inducted ministers are touring across the country to receive Jan Ashirwad, people's blessing. They are ensuring that the policies of the Modi government at centre reach the people. In this regard, former Assam Chief Minister and Union Minister Sarbanand Sonowal offered prayers at the historic Shri Vishnu Temple in Moregaon district of Assam. Sonowal said that he would work for the development of Assam and the northeastern region. Under the Jan Ashirwad Yatra, Railway Minister Ashwani Vaishnav visited the people, Odisha's Kalahandi and placed the policies and programs of the central government. He said that the union government took decisions in the interest of the people, even in difficult circumstances. Union Minister for State for Finance Pankaj Chaudhary's Jan Ashirwad Yatra started from Bastar district of Uttar Pradesh and reached the Bharatiya Janata Party regional office of Gorakhpur district, where the closing ceremony of Jan Ashirwad Yatra took place.
18 तारीख को लोकसभा बैठा और नया मंत्रिमंडल का विस्तार हुआ था। हर मंत्रिमंडल का विस्तार जब होता है तो सदन के दूसरे दिन प्रधानमंत्री पूरे सदन का परिचय मंत्रियों से कराते हैं और भारत के इतिहास में पहली बार हुआ कि मंत्रिमंडल का विस्तार होने के बाद प्रधानमंत्री को परिचय कराने का दोनों सदनों में अवसर नहीं दिया गया। उसके नाते प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक कटाक्ष भी किया था।
Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur reached Dharamshala, Himachal Pradesh in connection with the Jan Ashirwad Yatra. The Union Minister offered prayers at Ma Jwala. In a press conference, he said Modi government at the centre is dedicated to the welfare of the people.
Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme भारत में आज तक बैंक पहले गारंटी लेता था, फिर लोन देता था, कलेक्टर लेता था, फिर लोन देता था। मोदी सरकार ने प्रावधान किया, तब जाकर 3 लाख करोड़ रुपया उद्यमियों को, व्यापारियों को बगैर किसी गारंटी के मिल पाया। एक तो वो था। लोगों को अन्न की कमी ना आई तो 15 महीने तक किसी सरकार ने मुफ्त में अनाज नहीं दिया। मोदी सरकार ने 80 करोड़ लोगों को देने का काम किया। 3 महीने तक बहनों को रसोई गैस का सिलेंडर भी मुफ्त में दिया और इसके साथ साथ 31,000 करोड़ रुपए की मदद सीधे तौर पर खातों में पैसा डालकर मोदी सरकार ने 20.5 करोड़ महिलाओं को दी। इसके अलावा 3,000 करोड़ रुपया वृद्ध विधवा दिव्यांग को देने का काम मोदी सरकार ने किया।
The newly inducted ministers are connecting with the people directly and listening to their issues. The purpose of this yatra is that the citizens should feel the minister as one of their own and one whose aim is to serve them. Bureau Report, DD India.
Indian long jumper Shelly Singh won silver in the women's long jump with a personal best of 6.59 meter at the World Under-20 Championships on the final day of the World Athletics Under-20 Championships in Nairobi on Kenya on Sunday. She just missed out on the gold medal by a centimetre to Sweden's Maja Askag, the junior European champion. Shelly had earlier raised the hopes of a medal for India when she topped the women's long jump qualification on the third day of the Under-20 Championships on Friday. Shelly not only topped the qualification but crossed the automatic qualification mark of 6.35 meters in her finals and third attempt, which measured 6.40 meters. The nation is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to celebrate and commemorate 75 years of India's independence. In this regard, the Union Ministry of Information and Broadcasting will launch a gamut of activities to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav from Monday. The objective is to showcase the journey of New India and celebrate the contribution of the freedom fighters, including the unsung heroes of the freedom struggle, through massive outreach activities. More in this report.
Under its iconic week celebrations, the Information and Broadcasting Ministry will showcase the convergence of the values and glories of the freedom struggle of the past with the aspirations and dreams of a young, new and iconic India. A series of special programs to be launched by AIR Network, including Dharohar, speeches of freedom leaders, and Nishan, 75 landmark sites to be showcased. Aprajita, a program on women leaders. Special highlights and discussion programs of unsung heroes and freedom struggle. It will also show the day's importance during the freedom struggle as part of celebration of Amrit Mahotsav themes. To encourage the participation of people, it will also organize national and regional quizzes. DD Network will be broadcasting sectoral programs under Naya Bharat Ka Naya Safar. PIB will launch microsite on Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Directorate of Publications Division will podcast series on books published by Division on India's freedom struggle and the revolutionaries. Division to also launch book on INA trials in 1945. Films Division will organize an online film festival and webinar on topics such as technological advancement in filmmaking. DFF is making efforts non-commercial screenings of films at various embassies. Various activities will also be organized to enthuse citizens' participation in the celebrations. The iconic week under the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav will be a grand celebration by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which will showcase the convergence of the values and glories of the freedom struggle of the past with the aspirations and dreams of a young, new and iconic India. Bureau Report, DD India.
The nation celebrated the pious festival of Raksha Bandhan on Sunday. The festival of Rakhi is a special day to celebrate the unconditional love and the special bond between brother and sisters, a bond which is so pure, strong and cannot be described in words. The word Raksha Bandhan comes from a Sanskrit word which means the bond of protection or care. On this occasion, sisters tie colourful rakhi around the wrist of the brothers and pray for the prosperity, health and well-being. In return, brothers pledge to protect and support their sisters and also present them with gifts. President Ramnath Kovind extended greetings of Raksha Bandhan to countrymen. In a tweet, the president said, and I quote, Raksha Bandhan greetings to all fellow citizens. Festival is a symbol of love, affection and trust. Let us resolve to build a harmonious society where safety and dignity of women are given utmost importance and they fulfill their aspirations freely, unquote. Also, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu greeted the nation on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan. Naidu tweeted, and I quote, Happy Raksha Bandhan. Raksha Bandhan is a celebration of special and deep-rooted bond of love and respect between brothers and sisters. On this auspicious day, let us resolve to uphold the dignity of women and ensure a safe environment for them at all times. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also wished the nation on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, greetings to countrymen on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan. Union Minister for Railways Ashwini Vaishnav celebrated Raksha Bandhan in Odisha. A woman security personnel tied Rakhi to the Union Minister in Kalahandi district. The minister is on a visit to Odisha as part of the Jan Ashirwad Yatra. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of News Night. We'll be back tomorrow. Meanwhile, take care of yourself. Namaskar. News.